A long time ago, on a gaming system far away, there used to be good action-based Star Wars games. The Jedi Knight games were not only some of the best uses of the Star Wars license, but also some of the best examples of the genre itself. However, we haven't seen a good action-based Star Wars game in some time, so a lot of people have been looking forward to The Force Unleashed since it was first announced. Surprisingly, one of the strongest reasons for a Star Wars fan to play this game is the story. The game bridges the gap between episodes 3 and 4 and has been made canon by George Lucas himself. Not to give anything away, the tale sets up the general state of the galaxy in A New Hope and expands upon the mythos in interesting ways. It's better than the recent movies to be sure, and Star Wars fans will eat it up. The main draw of the game is, as the title suggests, unleashing the Force. Everything is intentionally over the top and meant to make you feel like the most powerful being to ever wear fingerless gloves. You can literally throw TIE fighters at people, toss soldiers right and left like Star Wars action figures, and electrify objects to make them into these crazy lightning grenades. It's pretty awesome to shove a bunch of Wookiees off a wobbly suspended bridge. The game does all of this well, and this is largely thanks to Luxoflux's digital molecular matter and natural motions euphoria technologies. DMM gives real-world properties to objects. For example, wood is able to realistically bend and break. Although this works well, it does not live up to the initial hype because it is not applied to everything in the game. You can splitter down a giant wooden door with ease, but trying the same move on a thin branch will only make it sway slightly. We know DMM can't be used on everything with current limitations of the consoles, but it does break the immersion and interactivity because some of the things you assume will break won't. The euphoria stuff does work as promised, and seeing two enemies grab onto each other is always entertaining. Still, it's not used quite as well as in other titles such as Grand Theft Auto 4, partly because a lot of the stormtroopers are off in the distance and you don't get the up-close and personal look at the technology in use. Although there is an extensive upgrade system and hidden secrets to power up your character, combat itself can get fairly tedious. This is my biggest gripe with the game overall, as you'll be fighting the same units over and over, and there is often one trick you have to use to beat a lot of them. It's not very rewarding to do the same thing over and over again. Electrifying and hacking at an ATST is fun for the first time, but electrifying, slashing a few times, and repeating over and over again gets old. A lot of the enemies in the game also feel fairly cheap, which is just how you have to beat them. The boss fights are big examples of this, where it feels like you have to do one trick that's often fairly cheap just to beat them. The art design is fantastic all around, but the level design itself is rather repetitive. There are few imaginative sections, but the levels are mainly just functional and only serve to get you from place to place. There are some simple puzzles that require force powers to be used, but it's usually just degrades to a trial and error approach where you use different powers until you find one that works on giant glowing objects that obviously need to be manipulated. Force Unleashed is not a bad game, but the story and presentation definitely overshadows the actual gameplay. The use of force powers is great, but the enemies you fight aren't. Good concepts are underused overall, so hopefully future installments will refine them. With that said, Star Wars fans will still find a worthwhile experience buried within all of the tedium, if not just for the story, but the ability to wield the Force like never before. For the full written review, Force Leap your way over to IGN.com.